Well, I think
Anyway.
I'll call
Yeah.
a special meeting to order. Item 2, Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Maloney,
here.
Cronin,
Here.
Ermeling, Jordan,
Here.
Pincinel,
Present.
Wyland,
Here,
Sagami,
Here. All right. Public comment, we don't have anybody here tonight. Minute of previous meeting.
None for this meeting. We'll take them with the next board meeting.
Okay. Do we have unfinished business? None. New business. Resolution 2025-001, amendment number 1 to the relocation order and determination of necessity for the Weston Avenue Road project. Prentice 1 Canal Street to Ryan Street. Michael?
Yeah, I guess last year, as we got through the design and public meetings, it was determined that we needed to remove the multi-use path from the north side of the roadway. Last fall, we adopted one of the amendments to remove the path from X to Von Kennel. And then late January here, the AECom finished up the redesign and was able to get the plat, the right-of-way needs of the project exactly reduced on the north side there with the multi-use path being removed. So now this modifies or amends that original plat so we can finish the right-of-way acquisition with the north side property owners. At least the ones that were holding off to sign anything until the plat was amended.
So the first.
So at a future date, I'm sorry, Husheng, at a future date, Michael, would we be able to add that that path in?
We can always add it in later as development occurs.
Right,
But,
okay, thank you. Thank
yeah.
you.
So the width of the road gonna be the same as the first portion of it,
Correct, yeah.
okay? Is there any question for Michael?
Nope, all good.
Trustee Pincinel, is a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Is this the last piece that AECom has to work on, and then they can work on the Cedar Creek Interceptor deal right away stuff? I know they
Yeah.
were holding off until you had all the Weston Ave stuff. Is this the
Yeah,
last chunk?
so this is the last chunk that they need to get done, correct?
Perfect, thank you. No further questions.
What's your wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Oppose? I have it, thank you. Do we have attorney? None? Administration refer? Administrator, I'm sorry. Remark from trustee? Joe?
Nope.
Mark?
Nope, nothing for me.
Steve?
Nope, I don't have anything.
All
Leland?
good here. Nope.
All right. I don't have any. Remark from
Motion to
president?
adjourn.
Doesn't have
Motion to
any.
adjourn? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Future item, next meeting date, Monday, February 17, 2025 at 6 p.m. I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
I move to
Motion.
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 I have it, thank you. This meeting Meeting is adjourned.
PM. Community Life and Public Safety Committee to order. All who are able, please rise for pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Isnelt.
Present.
Ermeling. Here. Slapka is excused. Foss is excused. Lopez Ferrero.
Here.
And Olson.
Here. Okay, and we've got Husheng sitting in for one of the vacant seats. So thank you, Husheng.
So, okay, so you're sitting in as a voting member? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, that's the first I've had this. Okay.
So Husheng, thanks for coming tonight. Your first CLIPS meeting. I would love to invite you to read the mission statement if you would.
Would you like me to do? I'm sorry.
Oh, I got you. The mission statement right up here.
Right here, it's on the agenda too.
That way we can all, thank you.
The Community Life and Public Safety Committee evaluated and make recommendation to the village board on a matter related to the safety, welfare, and liability within the village and their impact upon Village of Weston residents.
Excellent. Thank you, Husheng. And I see we've got some smiling faces in the audience here. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. Are you here to make a public comment or just for all the fun and adventure?
I'm here to make a public comment.
Fantastic. If you could please, I mean, you can do it from there. You can walk up to the podium, whichever. If you would just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Paula Gervine Brainerd. My address is 4504 Leduc Street in the village of Weston. The reason I am here is because of some incidents that have happened in the neighborhood concerning the safety of the residents on Leduc Street specifically. Some of it involves police calls from a dog attack. And the other is just neglect of property and lack of safety at the property. I called a neighbor, Husheng. He said to bring this petition, which you on the committee, I understand, have the petition. And he said to have neighbors sign it, whoever needed to, and submit it to the committee, which you should have. And I guess we're just here to find out information, and I do have on the dog attack, there is a police report and there is a village Rothschild Municipal Court case scheduled. I believe it's for April 1st. So that's my only comment, and I would like to answer any questions if you have any.
Excellent, thank you. So we can't physically take action on this evening since it's not an agenda item. However, this is a fantastic way to get something on the agenda for next month. And we're going to talk about this some. And there might even be some follow-up questions on the code enforcement to see if there's any code enforcement going on at I forget the address, 4408.
Correct.
But that is on the agenda, so you will hear about that if you stick around.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else comments?
We're together.
Oh, perfect. And you're here in support of that same,
I'm one of the people that signed it.
fantastic. Okay, anyone online? We got a couple of folks there. 5 it shows, some are probably us. Anyone online that would like to make a comment? Very well. So there are no more comments here. I do have the document that was referenced here. It's a letter. States dog concerns, see attached police reports, 2 recent attacks by homeowner's dog, which jumps a fence on a leash dog walking Leduc Street, both reported to police with a witness. A third unreported attack occurred in April of 24 with the dog again on the loose in the street. Continued frequent barking, whining, crying at the door to be let inside several times per week. Dog has been left outside for excessive amounts of time, many times in the early mornings and evenings. One of the below undersigned tried speaking with the homeowners in April of 2024 and was told there's nothing that works to prevent the dog from barking. Police reports filed in November after 1 hour of barking with no response from the homeowners. Officer indicated to call as needed and not to attempt any further conversations or contact with the homeowners. On information and belief, we believe that there are several cats in the home. Are all of the pets licensed? Property neglect, abandoned pool in the backyard that has not been used in years. Property is littered with totes, coolers, garbage, discarded items laying in the front yard, front and side yard, and bushes. Property is rarely mowed, tall grass and weeds all season. This can lead to rodents for them as well as the neighbors. Dog fences in the yard. Dog feces in the yard is not cleaned up, and during warm summer days, this leads to horrible odors and prevents windows from being opened. There's a rental unit upstairs on this property. Does the landlord have an obligation to provide basic yard upkeep as a landlord? The above affects all of our property values and the safety of the residents who are out and about walking or in their yards, including children, putting the children in the neighborhood at risk when the dog jumps the fence. The undersigned neighbors signing this complaint have observed and or have been affected by at least one of the above concerns or incidents. And I've got Kim, Julie, and Mike, Kim and Paula here, all from Duke Street, 4502, 4509, 4508, and 4504 that have all signed this, and there's an attached police report which will all wind up in the scanned documents that we can reference after in the minutes. Any other public comments? Very well. Speaking of minutes, we'll move on to the minutes from the next meeting. For the last meeting, this from January 6th, 2025. For a motion to approve or amend those minutes? To approve. Motion to approve by Louise. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Barb. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carried. Written communications, we read in public comment. There are no other written communications. Excellent, okay. Acknowledge reports from departments, code enforcement update. Ms. Roman?
Yes, sir. There is a report in the packet, on page 20, I believe that is. Would like a copy of the documents that you read, so we can attach that to the case. The case was entered in the system, just so everyone knows, on the 30th of January with 12 possible violations in there. So we'll be mobilizing on that this week. I don't know if Chief has any insight on that particular address at all or not, but.
So it's not in the report right now, but
it is not.
From the time that you printed the report or filed it until, yeah, got it. So they just crossed each other.
That would have been Friday it went in. Any other questions on the report? Just feel free. There are a few updates on there. Some of the older cases were getting closed up. Northwestern Avenue has a new owner, and they're looking at renovating that property up on Northwestern Avenue. That's been a blight on that neighborhood.
So they cut the grass since 18 though?
Yeah, the grass has been cut. They want to do a full renovation on the building, so tragically.
So this one could probably get closed out, yeah?
Yeah, it's on the next, it will be closed out on the next.
Okay.
Next report. Next month's report will have a relatively good update, thorough update to it. So.
And any update on the scope for the storage units?
That's an agenda item for next week's planning commission meeting. The next step was to bring it up to plan commission for potential revocation of their conditional use permit. the plan commission is the authority having approval on that, so it's plan commission's purview on how they would like to proceed with that property.
I just have one more question. Well, two more actually.
Okay.
Some of this stuff in Evolve, it says follow-up date of spring, that March 20, is that when Phil says spring is? What do we think of?
Do you have a particular case that?
I don't, but some of them say, most of them have very little information in Evolve, but the ones that do have, some of them said, which I get, like if one of them was a dumpster enclosure thing, and obviously you're not gonna build a dumpster enclosure in January.
Not really.
Follow like April 1st, March 15th, is there?
The dumpster enclosures typically are Valerie's purview, so I don't know if, I know that she's working on a bunch with Lockery. So I don't know if, and that's an ongoing evolving case that she's working on and have had communication with Lockery's representatives and the contractor, if I'm not mistaken. But as far as a follow-up date, I cannot specifically answer that question, Joe.
And then the last one is, so what is our protocol for some of these? And I'm gonna keep picking on that 2018 one. Like, is this do we roll through these? And I know this is kind of new, we're just getting into this, and I don't know, this is maybe the third or fourth month we've had this report physically in front of us every month, so I think that's good. It's good for all parties involved.
It is definitely, I don't disagree with that.
Some of the stuff is like, I see one of these is 9 weeks old and is still in a pending status. Like, are we still waiting to hear back from the person? Are we, like, we don't have enough staff to go out and follow up on it?
For example, the 5912 Business Highway 51 pending case. That has not been, we have not been inside of that for an inspection. Fire Marshal Christensen was inside, and that was a tip from him. So I have not been able to get back into that building to determine the level of violation on that.
Who was that from? Oh, yeah. You got anything else?
The only other thing I would mention is my understanding is that this report is gonna need to change slightly, that there was some rule changes and that we may not be able to give specific address numbers any longer within the report. It might appear more similar to how our police reports appear, which give you a block or a general location, but not specific addresses. So this might change in maybe not next month, but in the upcoming months, and it might not be as specific as the address number.
Thank you. So on that one, we'd look for a motion to acknowledge the report.
Motion to acknowledge.
Motion to acknowledge by Barb,
A second.
second by Louise. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carried. Unfinished business, discussion and or action on any further updates regarding future exploration of commercial building inspections program.
We have no advancement in that agenda item currently. I missed my test by 3 questions. So we're rescheduled and taking that again. So that's where we're at with that currently.
Open that one. Okay. Moving on, discussion and or action on the proposed amendments to chapter 34 fire prevention and protection.
I think the only thing we had in there was the Knox box language, which should be good as far as I am aware.
I just didn't know if you wanted a motion on the floor prior to discussion.
No, I don't think so. Send it. Read that to Robert's Rules of Order, 5 minutes, everyone found out what it was. And Who else has things on fire prevention?
Chief, has the village of Rib Mountain changed this ordinance at all?
No.
Will you recommend to them the change once if adopted?
No,
Should we recommend the change once
I would
adopted?
prefer not.
Oh, okay.
So I guess that was my comment in looking at some area municipalities. The current language that we have not amended is somewhat standard. Where that language comes from, I'm not sure. However, the village of Rib Mountain has the exact same language that Weston does. And we've been kind of on this whole thing lately of trying to make our ordinances match between the municipalities that are served by the police and fire department. And I personally don't see the point in changing something if it's going to now be different than our other partner agency within the fire department.
But Rib Mountain, I won't say they don't have any. But they have very few apartments. If they have any.
That's correct. They have two that I can think of off the top of my head.
So I mean, there's the difference. We have a lot.
Is it 170?
I think it's 144.
And that was kind of a driving factor on this is. It's multifamily residential complexes that have a common area. Well, that wasn't necessarily called out before. And then it says the fire department's recommendation that boxes be installed on all commercial. It's essentially saying the same thing, but just making it more explicit that.
I guess my concern is we've changed it from a shall to a recommendation. So now businesses that by our previous language would have been otherwise required to have a Knox box would not be, because we're only recommending it. We're not mandating it by ordinance, if I'm reading that correctly.
No, this is just to clarify that businesses that were not required before. So if you don't have an elevator, you don't have a sprinkler, you don't have a fire alarm, you don't have to have one. However, this includes, hey, the department recommends that you have one. Don't have to have one, but we would like to see you have one. Before that wasn't in there.
Well, before it said where access is difficult because of security, and it said shall before that. So any business that's difficult to access because of security would be required because of the shall. If I'm reading that correctly. Whereas now that would change to be a recommendation for certain things. So my concern is now we're making it less stringent than what we had before. And I know that the language of where access is difficult because of security is somewhat vague. But I think it gave the authority of the, I don't know if it's the building inspector or who, to use their professional training to make the appropriate recommendations to people that are building that they should or should not have a Knox box based off of that language.
So that last sentence should really just be access boxes shall be installed on all commercial structures. Get rid of.
But there's no reason to have it on all structures.
And I guess that's where people are gonna differ in opinion, and the chief's gonna have his thoughts on it. And
I mean, ultimately, it's my job to do what the direction is of the board and the municipalities ordinances. So my biggest thing is that obviously there are certain buildings that we need to get into, which is addressed. And my other concern is I really don't like angry business owners calling me because we broke down their very expensive commercial glass door.
do you have an idea of what the general cost of a Knox box installation is for a business?
I believe and don't hold me to this, but the last I knew, the box itself was just under $500. And then I think installation can vary greatly depending if it's being recessed into brick or if it's being installed on an already existing building, and there's a fair amount of variables there.
Anyone else on Knox box language?
Well, I guess my only comment was somewhat agreeing with that they may, or how is that worded again? I lost it on my page here. I guess I would rather have, well, I just went too far. Yeah. Have it that,
Technically.
where it's not may but shall. Or something. I'm not sure we wanna give them the choice if we're gonna have the ordinance. We should have shall instead of may.
Chief, if we adopt a shell for a Knox box, how many commercial structures would we be requiring to get a Knox box?
Oof, that's a question I'd have to ask Marty.
Lot.
That's right. Oh, I thought it was must to put the knockbox in there because I was told just put it in the building and then we collect the key and we put them in there, and that's what I did. It wasn't a choice really.
Well, the way the court ordinance was written for new buildings, it wasn't, yeah. Every new building that was getting built for the most part had one put in. But yeah, the difference here is that I believe the discussion was, smaller buildings that are, I think we talked about like Caribou Coffee or something like that. That
Now,
maybe,
don't get me wrong, it's a good idea. I didn't have problem with it, but I'm getting back to the statement in here is it wasn't a choice, it was just do it.
right,
So, and it is good idea to have it there because I'm not there watching the building all the time.
Can we let's clarify, I thought that the law was that you had to have a Knox box if you have a fire alarm system or the automatic fire suppression, or where it's deemed by the fire department that it's difficult because of security.
correct,
So not every commercial structure would have to have a Knox box if they didn't have a fire alarm system or a suppression system, or it was deemed difficult.
correct.
But now if we change this, you would still have to have a Knox box, which is required by law if you have a fire alarm system or a fire suppression system, or you're a multifamily residential complex, then you have a common area. But in all other commercial structures, it would be highly recommended.
That's correct. So basically what it's changing is if there is again, I'm just gonna use Caribou Coffee because it's a small building. The way it currently is as of today, our fire marshal could go there and say you need to have a Knox box because he would deem it as difficult to enter because of security. Where if the change is made, they can say, well, no, we don't have an automatic alarm. We're not an apartment building and we don't have a sprinkler system, so we're not putting one in. That's really the difference.
But if you show up at 123 Schofield Ave to Caribou Coffee, the only way you showed up is someone called because there's smoke rolling out of the window, right? Or there's flames or something. Like, you're not gonna show up. You don't have an alarm, you don't have a sprinkler, by the time you get there, there will be more fire damage than what you do knocking a door down.
Potentially, I mean, that's an extreme scenario, I think, is the small, the Caribou Coffee type building. I think the buildings that are probably a better example are something that's maybe 5,000 to 7,000 square feet. Like, we get called to Burger King 10 times a year because people think it's on fire. Obviously it never has been, but we get called there all the time.
After hours?
A couple of them have been, yes. We get called, there are many false alarms where it's wood burning appliances or, I know the city of Wausau gets called to the crematory all the time when they're cremating bodies because they think it's on fire. So I mean, there are examples.
Would you recommend to the village of Rib Mountain the piece where it is the fire department's recommendation that access boxes be installed on all commercial structures?
I think we could do that. Yeah.
I think it's a great idea, it should be. Because the fire marshal get in there, he can't get to any of the unit unless he breaks the door. But if you got a knockbox, he can get to the knockbox, all the keys there, and he can get to any of the unit he wants.
So I haven't seen all the ordinances for the village, obviously, we started going through these a few chapters ago, but Is it odd to have a recommendation in ordinance? I feel like ordinance always tell you what you should and shouldn't do. I don't know that, like, the fire department can make whatever recommendation they want. I just don't know that we need to have it written down in ordinance. Cause
That was-
it's not dictating what can and can't happen. It's just saying, if we had a choice, this is what we think we should do.
That was from me. Again, I'm trying to say that we recommend that you have it, so we don't have those. That way, if somebody comes back, I can at least say, hey, we recommend that you put one in. I guess that was my thought process behind that. I see where you're coming from, but that was my thought.
I mean, I'm not against it. It just seems kind of odd because I don't, even as I'm looking at like pieces above and below it, there's nothing that's like recommendations. It's just saying you can do this and you can't do this.
What if we use the words encourage? I know that it's like, every effort should be made to, or we encourage every effort to maintain trees on existing mature trees or whichever, that's in 94 somewhere.
If you give them a choice, do it or not to do it, you're not gonna get a good response because there is a cost involved. The knockbox itself is about $750. Then you gotta install it, that's another cost in there. Then you gotta collect all the key to put in there. These are all, it takes effort, and some people aren't willing to give the key away unless you reason with them why you wanna do that. Especially if it's a financial establishment. So, but I think if the ordinance is more forceful, it work much better.
Can I ask a question, just out of curiosity? But do EMS, do they have access to the key for the lockbox? So if there's an emergency call where the doors are locked, they don't have to break the door down to get into the building?
Yep, that's one of the main reasons we put the wording in there for the multifamily apartment buildings, so we can access those buildings at 3 a.m. if somebody calls and the building itself is locked and the patient can't open the door, we have access. So our vehicles have, I mean, I carry a key, and then our vehicles all have keys in them, and then they're locked in a separate box with a combination lock to get into them. So all of the fire department vehicles have a Knox box key in them, which is secured.
Important note on EMS calls, you can always tell the dispatcher if you have a key stashed someplace and they will communicate that to the person that's coming out so they don't break your door too.
Yes.
If it's an apartment complex, you don't. Yes, and hide a key to the main complex to.
Okay, good. So we bring this back, what do we wanna do? Or,
Yeah, I would like some different wording. I think it's something that shouldn't be just recommended for multifamily residents with a common area. It should be required.
But I think it is required for that.
yeah, the way it's written, it's required for that and recommended for all commercial properties, even if they don't.
I'm looking at the. It
Have a
says,
fire alarm suppression system or elevator.
yeah, it says fire alarm, right? Okay,
So those are
let
like
me
the 3
read it
triggering
again to
events
myself.
by the state, that if you have those 3, you have to have a Knox box, but we're trying to make it more restrictive than the state by
Oh.
adding multifamily and requiring every commercial property, no matter what.
Right,
Yeah.
where the commercial properties and all that, you are saying they need them if they've got fire alarm, and the whole thing. But then it says, or multifamily residential complexes that have a common area. It is the fire department's recommendation that access boxes be installed on all commercial structures. So I guess I know apartments are considered commercial structure, but you're recommending it. That doesn't mean I have to
I
do
think
it.
there's a period after the residential structure part, which makes it part of that above sentence, and then the rest of it is part of that recommendation.
You are correct. Yeah, it's hard to see with the underlining in there, Barb. So that where it says common area, that's any multifamily with a common area, it would be required by this language.
Well, if that's what you think, okay, fine. I still look at it as being recommended, not.
Yeah, there's a period between area and it. It's almost impossible to see with the underlining, but.
Could it be a separate second or sentence, like not part of that paragraph, but I mean, it's still part of number one, but its own little paragraph?
Absolutely, making it number 2 would be way
We're not
better.
making number two, just having it below number one. Like,
Like a second paragraph of number one.
yeah,
1A.
no, just
That'd be
another
alpha
paragraph.
for Maloney if he's still on.
Chief, so if we change the address to multifamily residential complexes that have a common area, does that, I mean, do you still need the language that says where access is difficult because of security?
I think,
Is that meant to replace that, or is that just an addition?
no, that access is difficult because the security would come out. So basically, the way it reads in this updated version is that if you have a sprinkler system, you have an alarm system, or if you have a multifamily residential with a common area, you have to have a Knox box. Any other commercial structure would be at the privy of the owner of the building, whether they want to install one or not.
Got it. Just wanted to make sure there wasn't other structures where access is difficult because of security other than multifamily.
Well, and that's been up to our fire marshal, and to be blunt, he's been telling everybody they need to put one on, because at 3 o'clock in the morning, most businesses are hard to get into because of security, because they're locked. So for the most part, especially as a building's either gone under a substantial remodel or has been built as a new building, he has been telling folks they need to put a Knox box in.
We would be comfortable with the language. I could space it down, so it would be underneath, not a separate number, but a separate paragraph. And then I think it would be good if we did include that the chief would ask Rib Mountain to put at least that piece about the recommendation of the access boxes on commercial structures to the village of Rib Mountain. Just so our ordinances are somewhat consistent, because you are right, we have been trying to do that, especially with the police department.
Yeah, okay. Who else got some on 34? No 34s. Okay, I got a couple. We talked last time about fire watch and calling that out. Is there a way you can clarify that or modify the words fire watch in the?
Was that for the tents? Is that the one you're?
Yes. I don't know if it's in the packet. I had to find it myself. I think.
Thought I read it, but I'm not sure, no.
It would, I think it's mostly under that number 2 and tents, and we had talked that.
Oh, yeah, here it is.
That it would be, that most of the tents that we have are open on all 4 sides. And so it wasn't necessary.
Which I agree with, but like we didn't change it to say what a fire watcher is or strike fire watchers or add something if the tent is open on 3 or 4 sides that they're not required. Or define large crowds, right? If it's more than 20,000 people or something.
That's a tough one. I'll be honest, I don't have a good solution for that one off the top of my head, because I mean, I would agree, what is a large crowd, but I mean, you know, if Arrow has their band outside and there's, I don't know, I have no idea, 600 or 800 people under the tent and it's open on 3 sides. In my opinion, there's no reason for a fire watch in there, but if there's a tent that's say double the size that they normally have, but it's closed on all sides and just has a couple exit doors and it's, you know, full of hay and they're doing some kind of show in there or something, that's a totally different story, but I don't know how to put a I don't know how to word it to catch everything.
And I know it has in here, circuses, carnivals. And we had talked that a circus likely would be the only, that would have a large enough tent that it would be enclosed, that it might be a concern of how to exit. So I'm thinking there wasn't a change made because we were thinking of the scale of which it implies a circus or carnival, but.
Yeah, my assumption is that number 2 is probably from many, many, many years ago. That was copied from a different municipality, and it probably was very much designed around when, you know, circuses were a big thing.
So can we just add something about if it's open on at least 3 sides, then this doesn't apply?
I don't have a problem. I think that might be the easiest way to take care of it, because then by far the biggest thing we see tents used for now is you know, a bar that has a band or something like that. And when those tents are open on those 3 sides, there's certainly no reason that they would need to have that.
Good.
Since we don't have large crowds defined, I know that wasn't what we were looking at there, but I mean, that is awfully vague. So it's hard to enforce when you don't define what that is. Do we just take out crowds altogether and just leave it as open tent or closed tent at any event? Would that make it simpler? And then just take out, because again, like large to you might be 1,000, large to me might be 25 when they're in a tent. So like, do we just take that out and just leave it as a, hey, if you have a closed tent, this applies. If it's open on 3 sides or more, it doesn't. Just keep it event based, make it simple.
We could, and I know Chippewa County has some spelled out limits for, you know, small crowd, medium crowd, large crowd, because of their music festivals with Country Fest and Rock Fest, and we've worked with them on that, so I'm fairly familiar with that. And I think their cutoff is 10,000 people for a large crowd.
So if we didn't want to go that way, then I would say we need to identify or define what large crowd means. So that this is more easily enforceable if it ever did need to be enforced. So either or.
I mean, what if we said that the tent being open on a minimum of 3 sides and a crowd of less than 10,000? To be a very large tent to fit 10,000 people in.
I was just gonna say, where we put it up.
Steve's still online. We could ask him if he has a 10,000 person tent.
If you bring your wallet, I'll make the tent.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of tents, where do we get a permit for a 240 square foot tent? It says tents permit required. It's the same thing right here, number 1, permit required. No tent excluding 240 square feet shall be erected, maintained, operated, or used without a permit when erected, maintained, operated, or used in a commercial property.
I think it falls under the temporary use permit when somebody applies for a special event and they're gonna have a tent.
So what if I don't have what if I don't have that? What if it's not a special event? What if I wanna set up a fireworks stand, or I wanna sell eggs for $9.99 a dozen, or whatever we wanna do?
That
How do I
exceeds
get a,
240 square feet.
that's not that big.
Okay.
Right? 10 by 20, I don't know, what 20 by 20 is probably a really common tent that exceeds 240 square feet. It's almost double. Right, that 240 is a pretty small tent. If you're renting a tent for a commercial property, where do we get the permit? Is that something?
You'd get it in zoning, I mean, in planning and development. You would apply for it upstairs. I mean, we have some
Do
music.
we have a tent permit?
Marty does tent inspections several through the summer.
Okay.
I think we do it as a special event permit, but we have tents on it. Do you have a tent? And then it's included as part of the special event.
So I would have to get
Temporary
a
use.
special event permit just to put a tent up, even if it's not an event. Correct?
So if you were going to, in the example of sell fireworks or t-shirts or eggs, you would get a temporary use permit and they would ask if you're gonna have a
So I'm
tent.
gonna have a customer appreciation party September 14th.
It's a special event.
That's a special event.
Well, if we would use that permit, like Cellcom, they have their celebration, their summer celebration things every year, and they just do the special event permit.
Okay, so
For
we
the
do that with
tent.
that, and then that is called out on our fee schedule, right? A special event permit is considered a tent permit, or we roll those together. How long is that permit good for?
Is it-
30 days, is it?
I think so.
I wanna say it's 30 days.
And that's a shall issue, like, is there any requirements for issuing a tent permit?
There's requirements on the tent.
Right, that it's gotta meet all the
Yeah.
SPS 314 outfit, but.
Yeah.
Okay. And all of our local commercial tent vendors are made aware that they can't put up a tent without a permit.
What about the question, I'm not, but if I got married in my backyard and I had a tent put up, so no, then you wouldn't require a tent.
What if you got married at commercial property?
Yes. Then you would, if. Yeah, I would think yes, if it's outside
The
on,
church is usually pretty commercially, right? It's institutional, I suppose, but
I'm not sure if we have any churches that put up tents for special events.
you didn't get
No
married
doubt
yet.
sometimes does.
Not gonna have.
You know, we had like Trone, they hosted a wedding at their facility, but because it was a private event. So I'm trying to remember how that worked, because I mean, it's a very rare thing. I can't remember if we had them do a tent permit or not.
I would hope so. There's a permit required right here in chapter 34,
But I
Valerie.
think those are for public events.
It doesn't say that. It says general fire safety requirement, permit required. We must have one. So that's why I'm asking if all the tent vendors know that you must have a tent permit in order to pound a tent in a commercial property.
How do we do that?
So I'd like to see those folks made aware. If we can do that. I mean, was there 3 of them-ish in the area?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly could for those that rent them or put them up.
And then 34, now this is the part that I don't believe is in here. 34-214-3 alpha. I never knew that was there. I always typed municipal code in the top and then found the 3 broken
You gotta
links.
use the button.
Thank you.
Yep. You said 214?
34-214-3 alpha. States inspection, the owner, agent, or occupant of a commercial building shall schedule an appointment with fire inspector for inspection of building and occupied spaces. Any violations of this chapter or any portion of the Weston Municipal Code observed at the time of the inspection shall be corrected prior to the new tenant taking occupancy. I think we talked about this last time some. That we can maybe reword that a little bit so that. Cause like Adventure Waits, their landscaping didn't meet, they couldn't. Plant the trees in December, whatever the deal was, but they're still granted occupancy. This says any. Municipal code, any violation of municipal code, well, the code isn't met because they don't have all their trees in. So do we want to change that to like fire code violation or something relating to fire?
Yeah, that's outside of me. I see what
You
you're.
would care that fire stuff is met, right? You could care less if there's trees in the yard.
Correct. We wouldn't know the difference if their landscaping meets the standards or not.
So I mean, for the purpose of this ordinance, you could simply just strike out or any portion of the Weston Municipal Code, because then it's up to zoning or planning to address other things when they're giving occupancy permits, right? Outside of this code.
Eventually, I guess it's probably redundant with another chapter somewhere. I don't know which chapter that'd be, but I'm sure it's probably one of them somewhere. That's redundant.
Right. Restricted to just fire violations, not any violation. I didn't write the subparagraph, but 34-214 door, floor and stairway identification.
Number 8.
Any occupancy having more than 5 means of egress and or more than 2 floors in height shall number the individual egress areas according to this section. Who enforces this?
We do.
This building isn't compliant, my building isn't compliant, your building isn't compliant. Weston here that has a building, your building isn't compliant. So I have 4 man doors and 4 overhead doors. That's 8 means of egress, right? That's 8 doors. I have 0 of them labeled.
You shouldn't have told me that.
Well, we're talking about it because does it, like, is this something that really needs to be there?
The intention of this is for large buildings, i.e., I'm just gonna pick on loss of supply, is when we get called the 8911 Technology Way. And for a male in cardiac arrest, all right, where the building is ginormous, it could take us 10 minutes to drive around in circles and find them. That's the intention of this. It's a lot easier if they say come to door 17, and door 17 has a giant 17 on it.
So is 5 the right number, or do we need to change that number?
Well,
Which 5 is pretty restrictive.
what's that?
Why don't you change it to square footage of? That's the requirement on when you're finding people. Doesn't matter how many doors they have, if it's a small building, you're gonna find them, it would be square footage of the building, really, is what it is.
Let me look into that.
Okay.
Come back.
And then
Exactly.
in that same,
Safe. Nobody cares how many doors are, you need
same thing, since we're
one way.
we're checking into that some, it talks about interior door, so this building too, the letters aren't big enough any outside the numbers. They're labeled clockwise, I've looked at them, but they're not big enough, they have to be 6 inches, I think. 3.5 inches on the inside, so if you look in the storeroom, we don't have 3.5 inch letters inside this boardroom that say which door it is and how to get it, so we're not meeting the spec here.
Say that again, I'm sorry, I was to write myself a note here.
It wants the interior labeled with any interior door that is an egress. Where is it? In each interior door providing access to an enclosed area, no.
What code are you in here right now? What number is this?
314, 34, 214, 8.
214.
Each interior door providing access to an enclosed stairway that is considered part of an accessible means of egress shall be identified with numbers and letters not less than 3.5 inches in the following manner. None of our stairways here have that. None of the ones that I found. There's probably stairs here that I don't even know about, but all the ones I walked through don't have it.
Okay, I'll look into this section.
Okay. That's all I had on 34. Everybody else 34? Okay. So we need a motion to defer action until next month.
A motion.
Move to defer action by Brent. Is there a second? Second by Barb. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All say no.
No.
1 no by Louise. Motion carried. Okay. Number 9, discussion and or action on proposed amendments to chapter 38, health and sanitation. This one is from last month too.
I think that was what we wanted, just kept it put road in right.
Yes, yeah. Just updated the references, changed rat to rodent in all locations of the ordinance. And then did put in 2 additional cross references to solid waste.
It's up on 38. Page 26, just above paragraph 2, it says health officer. We never defined health officer. Or should this be police officer or Marathon County Health Department? Or just any healthy officer?
I guess I always think of health officers being county, so I don't.
I think we should put it both, or. Please, I can't see it in there, but sometimes it's easier for us to.
Of elimination of harborages, that last 2 words, health officer. Yeah, right there.
We could add county health officer too, because I think of health officers through Health and Human Services. They wouldn't be a humane officer.
And then in the rubbish and smells and stuff, I think we talked some about putting in some kind of words, utilize best practice to minimize dust and manure smells and stuff. Did that, I didn't see that in there, but maybe I missed it.
No, thank you for reminding me. I remember that from last time, but that did not get changed.
Any other amendments to chapter 38? Okay. So, do you want to approve it with the changes or wait until you see it back?
I'll make a motion to defer it the next time.
Open to defer until should be March, okay, till March. By Brad, wait a second. Second by Louise. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carried. New business discussion and or action on the Class Bravo fermented malt beverages and Class Bravo intoxicating liquor license. Sierra Bravo Golf Taco Weston LLC doing business as Fuzzy's Taco Shop. Pam?
Well, Fuzzy's Taco Shop had a renewed non-reserve liquor license that began July 1st of 2024. They ceased operations of their business as of December 1st, from our understanding. And we have in our ordinances that if a business our license is not in continuous use for 60 days, then it is subject to, it says revocation, but it wouldn't be revoked. It's just, they're not using it. So it could be revoked, it could be non-renewed at the end of the licensing term, or unless otherwise authorized by the village board. So we also have in our ordinances, well, just to take a step backwards, we did contact Fuzzy's Tacos by phone, letter, and email, asking them of their intentions. We heard back from nothing. So we are just asking for the acknowledgement to move it to the board, that this license is available once again, and then we would move forward with the procedures of if any establishment has a reserve license, they would have the first opportunity to get the non-reserve license before it would become free for any other new business that is coming into the village.
Perfect.
don't we have to take some kind of action to revoke the licensing as they are not surrendering it voluntarily?
Well, I mean, that's what the language says, is that it shall be subject to revocation or non-renewal unless otherwise authorized by the village board. So
Because
they,
usually if
they
if
did not surrender it.
They
They did not sign
so
paper.
they still have it unless we take action to revoke it, I think.
You could add that in your motion, Barb, that you would wish to take,
Would be a
recommend to the
recommendation,
board
yes.
for revocation of that license due to inactivity.
I move to recommend to the Board of Trustees acknowledgement of availability, Class B intoxicating liquor license, and that staff move forward with procedure when Class B intoxicating liquor license becomes available by board action to revoke that license
Activity.
due to inactivity.
You have a motion to recommend to the board to move forward the procedure to revoke the liquor license from the inactive licensee. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Louise. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carried. Number 11, discussion and or action on an ordinance to create section 82.114 vehicle abandoned and junked.
This would be Chief Hunt.
This is one of the housekeeping items to try to get things the same from municipality to municipality. So we briefly talked about this in the past, but basically it's a junk motor vehicle ordinance. And one of the situations that we could use it on would be like the Aspen Street. And we talk about cleaning up some of that past stuff that we have laying around there. This is one way of doing that. And we've used it in Rothschild for 100 years. Well, since 1996 when I got hired there, and it works good for us. So basically we ticket and tow is what we do with those vehicles. So Roman might have more to that, or Michael might have more to that, but another example would be is sometimes when the plow is coming through, they want us to move vehicles and we really can't. In certain situations, we can put a ticket on them. But if the vehicle's been sitting there for a prolonged period of time and doesn't meet the other ordinance requirements, then we try to contact the owner. If not, then it's abandoned. We ticket and tow it. So far out of all the vehicles we've towed in Rothschild, I've never had a complaint from somebody. We give them a fair opportunity to try to get it out of there before we do that. But Michael and might have more to it. I don't know. Roman?
It's the struggle is it's just not really clearly identified in our current code. There's a brief snippet in 5105 that says you can't accumulate them in the public highway or whatnot, but it's just it's extremely obtuse. So it would be nice to have it more clearly defined for the officers out there.
Discussion on this one? I do have a couple of questions, 35 paragraph Bravo. Says a junked motor vehicle states any vehicle which cannot be safely or legally operated. I think I understand the intent of this, but technically, so a vehicle with tires that are completely bald or inoperative lights or brakes that don't work or that are more to zero or turn signals or bumper heights out of regulation, any of those cars technically? So your big jacked up hillbilly pickup truck?
Well, the way that we handle it, if vehicles are registered and they're sitting in a driveway, they're still maintaining it. So even if it's not operable per se, so there's some variation to that a little bit. So as long as it has current registration on it, it's being taken care of to a certain point. And so.
Okay, so it's at the kind of the officer's discretion at that point. But if you had to, you could use it the other way.
Correct.
And then paragraph 3, disassemble vehicles and operative vehicles on private property. Again, I think I understand the intent, but I can tell you I had their repair facilities maybe are private property. And I had a 1985 Toyota Celica that took over 60 days to get parts for. Well, that's disassembled and it's inoperative. I mean, it's not abandoned. Bill would have been pretty sad if he towed his car away, but,
So this is, this is more designed for not like a commercial building and stuff like that, and we also understand, but one example is on Ryan Road, there's a vehicle sitting in the parking lot at the apartment complex with no motor and no hood on it. And that vehicle's been there for a period of time, so you contact the owner and say, what's the deal? And he says, well, I'm working on it, I'm waiting for a part, we understand that, then we have to follow back up on it and throw it on the list, but if it's sitting on the side of the road or in someone's front yard and it just doesn't have a motor or hood on it, and nobody wants to return our call, kind of like the liquor license, then here's the deal, so.
so you don't think there should be like any exemptions for repair facility?
Well, when you,
Which I get, like, yeah, if that thing is sitting out there, you got grass growing underneath it, like, come on, guy, Joe's never gonna fix that car.
that's kind of a little bit, one of them that we have is Chico's sales, and if you went to Chico's lot, but he's pretty much exempt for that because he's a commercial business and that's his business to deal with vehicles. Jaeger's Junkyard would be another one. But zoning is part of this whole thing too, and it's really designed for a situation where you have a duplex or apartment complex or residential or alleyways and stuff like that. It's not really designed for, even Coke or one of those Sutton Transport where they have a vehicle. It's not designed for that. It's, you call us and there's a vehicle sitting in Target parking lot and you can't get a hold of anybody, and that vehicle sat there for 2 days or 3 days and it's missing a wheel or stuff like that, so.
So what about like a snowmobile trailer? Right, I think it might be there for 9 months or 29 months until we got snow yesterday. Is that still considered abandoned if it doesn't move? You would think not, but again, just.
If it's at somebody's residence and either behind their house or screened or however the ordinance is on a surface, but if it's sitting on the side of the road and there's nobody around, or it's sitting at a cul-de-sac someplace, then yes. So it's kind of officer discretion per se, but there's discussion that's in it too. If you have a snowmobile trailer sitting in a park and there's no one around and you can't get a hold of the owner, then it's coming with us.
On junk vehicles?
I'm open to any changes or wordage. I just know we use a lot of common sense in it, so.
That's good. Look for a motion to recommend the board.
I recommend to the Board of Trustees the creation of regulations for junked and abandoned vehicles by adopting ordinance number 25-002 to create section 82.114, vehicles abandoned and junked in the Village Code of Ordinances.
Motion by Louise to create an abandoned vehicle or junked vehicle section as presented. Is there a second? Second by Brent. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Both say no. Motion carried. Discussion and or action on proposed amendments to chapter 42 law enforcement.
I made a note in the RFC for this one that we do need to make some pretty big changes because of our transition to Mountain Bay Metro. So, I'm not sure if anyone noticed other things other than those obvious ones that we do need to update that it's not the joint partnership anymore with just the town and the city of Schofield.
In reference to that, Jamie, does Rothschild get added and you remove Schofield in the town because they are contracted? So they're not required, they could tomorrow say, no, or however the contract states, but they could walk away from For Mountain Bay Metro.
Yeah, I would believe that it would be, because the establishment of the police department is Rothschild and us, so they would both be removed. I don't think that we would list contractees.
So the town of Weston and Schofield would not be listed in here, correct?
I don't believe
Just
so.
Rothschild and Weston.
The town of Weston is now, they're got a contract rather than a partnership.
They're a contract, yes.
Okay.
Ownership is between Rothschild and us. I'm also wondering, I don't know if Rothschild, and I apologize for not looking, I don't know if they did a similar ordinance that talks about that joint relationship. So a piece of me is also just wondering, because we did have to approve a separate ordinance for the court that says we're a part of the Rothschild area municipal court. Maybe both of these wouldn't be necessary anymore. It's probably more a question for Attorney Edie than just me answering myself, because I don't know that if we have an
All of 42
agreement,
might be able to go away.
maybe.
In that 42-102 action area where it says Village of Weston, does that have to change to something?
The only thing I could see is if we made the reference to, and I apologize, I'm gonna forget the ordinance number, but we had to adopt this municipal court ordinance when we went to the Rothschild area municipal court, because this is what was required by our state individual that oversees our region. So all of that is being handled by Rothschild area municipal court, so we may not need any other piece of what's here in 42 that talks about municipal court actions. It might be something if the committee is comfortable. I know Attorney Edie likes it if it's a referral, and maybe we would just suggest a referral for him to review to see if it's still necessary anymore.
I know the municipal court is separate in a sense from joint police department, but there is no longer a Rothschild and Weston. It's, Mountain Bay. So I guess when you're talking like that, it almost sounds like Rothschild still is independent from us.
Well, the municipal court is the Rothschild area municipal court. That's what we are part of the Rothschild area municipal court. There's no Mountain Bay Metro Municipal Court like there was Everest Metro Municipal Court.
Okay.
Because Rothschild area municipal court serves more than Mountain Bay Metro police service areas. They also handle,
Take care of Marathon City.
thank you.
Okay, well, that answers that, because when you were talking, I was going, wait a minute, there isn't individual anymore. Okay.
I would agree. I think it's like redundant, because first of all this comes straight from statute anyway, so I'm gonna assume Rothschild's looks really similar to what this one does, and we have an ordinance saying we're part of that court. I don't know us having a ordinance dictating how court would go, and we really don't have that authority or purview anymore is necessary.
Can I just make one recommendation?
Please.
And can we just put this on hold and we can just sit down and have a conversation about this, and I'll pull the Rothschild one and the original agreements that we assigned or signed to bring it together and look at it, just so we're on the right page of it.
Yeah, because I would assume if Rothschild does have this piece about how do you operate court and how our appearance is handled, and even if it's, I don't know that it necessarily needs to be in ordinance, even if it's within your policy, the court policies, I think that might be sufficient, because we've agreed to your court policy.
And some of the other things have changed because the oversight board made some decisions on some things according, with the attorney, and I think we just need to have a conversation on that. There might be a different variation to this as well.
So refer it to the next meeting?
Yeah, postpone it if you could, please.
Are you making that motion, Barb? You got the floor, however.
30 days would be fine.
Well, I make a motion to defer this till the next meeting.
So a motion to defer action on chapter 42 until the next meeting by Barb. Is there a second? Second by Brent. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. We'll say no. Announcements.
I don't know if we announced at the beginning of the meeting, but Kim Foss also had to leave the committee, stepped aside from the committee. But we have an advertisement out, and we have some interest, so that's good, and that would go to potentially to the board in February, so we may have some new members in March.
Any other announcements? No, not. Remarks. Shang, you're sitting in.
Thank you.
Barb?
I need to be excused from the next meeting.
You got it. And Brent? Please, no, I have nothing. Other than wish to thank Kim for her time, service, and help here with this committee. Much appreciated. Items for next agenda, our next regular meeting date is Monday, March 3rd at 5 p.m. We would love to see you there. And I would ask that we can have that complaint at 4408 the Duke Street added as an agenda item, so we can actually talk about it. Maybe, I don't know if we could send a letter, email, passenger pigeon smoke signal to that guy or gal and see if they want to come on down and have a chat. Invite them down formally.
Yeah, we can do that, yeah.
Okay.
Unless Administrator Gaber does a objection to that.
My only piece would be that we haven't previously done individual addresses that same way. We have followed it through the process of following up through planning and development, rather than having it as be an individual that comes in for a single agenda item. I'm thinking if we can also do a update at the next meeting. We could handle that under code enforcement, and if the committee wanted an update on that address and what was happening there, we could provide that under code enforcement.
I feel like it's extremely important that these fine folks took time out of their day, wrote a letter, they talked to neighbors, like, this is our job here, is community life and public safety, right?
Not disagreeing, which is why we have a process for code enforcement, because we also have other neighbors that have issues that may be similar or alike, and that's, you know, then we follow that through the process, and it could be addressed under code enforcement. But it is the committee's decision on however they would like to handle it.
Anybody else thoughts on that?
My personal preference would be that we allow it to flow the way that it normally would, which is through enforcement efforts. This was just brought to our attention here in late January. So let the enforcement efforts try to make a difference, bring it up as an update through the packet that we can discuss openly and find out what changes are that might provide the folks that are most affected by this an update on the efforts that are being made. And then if they're not satisfied with some of the changes, they can vocalize that to us. If we're not satisfied, we can vocalize that to code enforcement and go from there. But I think, you know, give it a chance to go through that.
Agreed.
And I would assume that Mountain Babe would have an update, or there'll be some communication from an officer before the next meeting too, regarding the dog complaints.
We're working together.
Yeah, okay.
Well done. That's it. Husheng, you didn't make any motions tonight. Would you like to?
No.
Sure.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn by Husheng. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Louise. Discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Both say no. Motion carried. We are adjourned at 6:14 p.m. Not quite 5 minutes.